Myself. Okay, so yeah, my name is Mohammed, and I like to consider myself as a Python developer. You can also regard me as a data scientist. So, moving forward, I would also want to say a little bit way above intermediate level. So, preferably, you can call me an experienced Python developer, or you can call me an intermediate Python developer. So yeah, that's basically about me. I love to be detailed whenever I'm relating information about a particular concept to people, and I'm also open to learning as well. We are in an interactive session where everybody can also contribute to what's being taught. I can also learn from you. You can also learn from me. So feel free to ask me questions at junctions where we are not so sure about the answer, and as well junctions where you feel I'm making a mistake or I'm taking a U-turn. You can also correct me and yeah, enlighten me better. So that's just a brief about me and my skill level coming onto the Python beginners class, and I'll be your facilitator for today basically. So yeah, I'd like to hear from you guys as well. Probably we could start off with Israel. Just kindly tell us, you know, introduce yourself. What's your skill level? Have you had any sort of experience with programming before this class and all of this?
We can't hear you.
Yeah, muted Israel.
Israel, I can't hear you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, facilitator. My name is Makinde Oshedi. I studied computer science, so I'm much more aware of programming language. And I'm so much acquainted with Python language. And these are up to object-oriented level to my extent. So I'm not new to programming. Hello?
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, okay, that's all right. So you have some sort of exposure to programming, which
Yes,
is a good
exactly.
fit for you taking this course. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Israel, for that. Yeah, we can go ahead to Joseph.
Good morning, everyone. My name is
Mm,
Josephine. Um, I'm a bit familiar with programming, basically JavaScript. So I kind of find Python a little bit fascinating and interesting. And beside the fact that I like learning new things, jumping on new things, I just basically lost interest in JavaScript because of too much updates and always not getting the right thing to do. So on Python, I cannot say I'm an intermediate. I would rather say I'm a beginner. Just I'm familiar with the fundamentals up to the OOP basics, basically. Thank you.
oh, that's interesting. Okay, so basically, you ran away from JavaScript.
Yeah, funny, right?
Oh, well. Not bad. Well, when it comes to too much updates regarding a particular programming language, something that is quite inevitable in all programming language. So
Yeah, that's
tech
true.
itself,
Joking.
yeah, tech itself basically is an evolving industry. So when an industry is evolving, what it means basically is that new things keeps coming up, right? And
Yes,
you need to be like you need to follow the trend
exactly.
while it's coming up. Yeah. So well, I'm not entirely sure you wouldn't face the same problem while getting your hands on Python,
Mine
but
is more
I
straightforward.
think you can just get familiar with the fact that things evolve. So yeah, it's all right. Yeah, thank you, Josephine. Let's go on to Oluwase Michael. Can you hear us?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Mohammed. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
good morning.
yeah. So, my name is Oluwaseyi Michael Shodia. Uh, I'm a Python developer. Not that really proficient in the language, but to some extent, uh, uh, I'm doing well. So that's that for that. Yeah, and I've been using Python for quite some month or even close to a year. And yes, and actually picked some interest in React. I have a little bit on understanding about React as well, but Python is kind of more, the framework is more, should I say, user friendly. The object oriented level, I actually like it. Uh, but yeah, so much more prefer using Python. I prefer much using Python because the framework is just uh, well packaged in the term of web development using Django. That is one database, and whole. So that's that for that. Yeah.
Hmm, okay, interesting. I see we have a lot of proficient guys in the house. So yeah, it's a good one. And just like you said, it's kind of user friendly. Yeah, more part of the advantages why Python is like one of the most preferred programming language as it is now. But yeah, we'll figure that out. There are more good stuff with Python that we get our hands on moving forward. So yeah, thank you, Oluwashi. Um, we have Leonard. Can you hear us, Leonard?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Yeah, all right. We can hear you.
Yeah. Like I did not get the question. I was not in the house. I've not connected.
Oh, okay. So we are just getting to know each other. We're kind of introducing ourselves as to our previous experiences in terms of programming. If you've had any experience with programming before this class, will you consider yourself an absolute beginner or an intermediate level person? And what is the purpose of you taking this course, basically?
Okay. I I'll consider myself an intermediate programmer because I have basic knowledge of basically some programming language like JavaScript, Python. I just prefer Python because it's easier to grasp. Like the syntaxes are better. Like just so easy. Unlike some other languages like Java and the rest. So, and I'm actually interested web in the web programming aspects. So I'll I would like to get more in touch with Django's framework. And I was actually here during the last listen, that October class. But I was not but I could not concentrate better because I was having exams. So that's why I had to retake the class. That's basically it.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I see that you already know what the curriculum for this class is. It's just that you'd want to be more focused this time around. So, and
Yes.
that's all right. All right. Thank you, Leonard. So we have okay. I think that's it for now. Osinachi is not on the call any longer. So we could just carry on with the class basically. So yeah, it was great talking to you guys and knowing that we wouldn't be stressing so much with this course basically because most of us averagely are already familiar with programming, so it wouldn't be like a very difficult thing to pick up programming, um, which is unlike somebody that is an absolute beginner basically. So I guess most of you as well have received the curriculum for this particular cycle and what it entails basically. I also know that most of you in your heads are already like, oh, I'm way past this curriculum. I need to be in the intermediate class already and all of those. Yeah, just like the coordinator has said, if you feel confident enough to want to be at the intermediate class, you can attempt the test within 24 hours and submit it to Bincom. While they grade your tests, they will then decide if you would want to move to the intermediate class. But regardless, it's also a good thing to, yeah, refresh your skills on some of these beginners concepts because they are the foundation of Python itself, and you cannot do away with the foundations all the time. Why? Because most times when you tend to crack very difficult problems, the first thing that you need to go back to are always your foundations, always your fundamentals, right? So that's basically why we need to most of the time refresh our heads and skills. you know that's what you should be doing as a programmer almost every day. You can just pick up some coding challenge, try to harness your skill by solving problems and stuff like that. Yeah, it helps you to understand the language perfectly well. So moving forward, I also discovered that most of us here have different reason as to why they are taking the course basically. For some of us, they are interested in Python, probably because Python seems to have a more easy syntax, user-friendly, object-oriented, and all of those good stuff. For some of us as well, they would want to explore how Python is being used, in building web applications. And for some of us deep down, you might be interested in things like artificial intelligence, data science, machine learning, and all of those, brainy stuffs. And they also opted out for this course basically. But I would always like to set our goals and our roadmaps straight before starting any course because I think that's the foundation of why you're learning something. I think it's very important for us to understand why we are learning something sometimes, right? For somebody like me, when I started out learning Python, I never understood what Python was used for. I just knew I was learning a programming language because apparently I saw somebody that was working with Python and I was making money. So I wanted to make money too. So I started learning Python, but I didn't know what I was doing at the time because I didn't know that, oh, with Python I can do X, with Python I can do Y, or with Python I can become X, or with Python I can become Y. So we actually need to understand, oh, why are we learning this Python? What are we learning it for? Right? Basically, it gives you like a heads up and a roadmap as to what you're going to be doing. So just like every other programming language, they are used for different things, right? But for Python, we have several tracks that are within the Python space that you might want to take. For some people that are quite interested in building automation systems, in robotics, they enjoy the advancement of AI. For some people that want to work on things like self-driving cars, for some people that are just generally interested in training machines to do stuff for them, you know, they might want to consider following the route of becoming a data scientist, right? We'll come on to that later on because data science itself can be very broad, right? There are also some other set of people that are quite interested in building web apps. They like to build, solid and complex web apps that will be able to provide solution to some sort of audience, and building robust systems for people basically. So these set of people might consider using Python for web development, right? So in other words, they are going to be becoming a web developer or a web engineer, right? And there are also some set of people that might be interested in games, right? Regardless of if Python might not necessarily be the go-to language for building games, they also have an ample packages that enables you to create 2D games and 3D games, right? So some people might be interested in building games and they might want to use Python to build the games, right? Some other people might want, to be automation experts. They would want to, write scripts that automate stuffs, right? You might be an automated or automation freak that want to just automate everything about your life, right? You want to automate the fact that you wouldn't want to be standing up to switch up your or switch on your electricity all the time. You don't want to automate those processes. You want to automate every little thing, within your space, right? You can be an automation expert using Python because Python has proven so many times to be the most preferred programming language for automation, basically. And we can see that in several solutions out there, right? So these are the different categories or different paths or different routes that you can take while you are learning Python. So at this junction, I believe you already know what you want to achieve by learning Python. Do you want to become a data scientist? Do you want to become a web developer? Do you want to become a game developer? Do you want to become an automation expert? You know, these are the questions you should be asking yourself. And by now, I know most of you already know what you want already. But as far as this course or this curriculum basically is concerned, we are going to be going through the route of a web developer. Just like most of you, if you had sat down to analyze what the curriculum is all about, you'd see that at the end of the day, you'd be having skills that would enable you to create web applications, perfectly, right? At the end of the day. So not to say that these particular skills that we're teaching you guys in beginners class wouldn't aid you in becoming other things within the Python space. Not that the curriculum that we have wouldn't enable you to know much things about automations or wouldn't enable you to know much things about data science or wouldn't enable you to know some other things about building applications, right? This particular curriculum was curated in a way that it enables you to know everything, something about everything, but everything about something. I will take that again. It enables you guys to be able to know something about everything within Python, and as well everything in Python about something in Python. If that doesn't sink in at this moment, well, you can go back home and reflect. But what I mean, basically, in other words, is that this curriculum has some concepts that would touch every route or every path within Python. And this curriculum also would also, make you proficient in one path in Python, right? So just like I said, this curriculum, enables you to be able to be familiar with building web applications perfectly. So moving forward, I would like us to go through this particular curriculum and to see what we are going to be learning in, within this whole cycle. And at the end of the day, what we'll be achieving from this particular curriculum. I know most of you already have this curriculum already. So it's slated here that, your day one of this course basically will be introducing you to Python, more like having a review of what the Python basics are, right? Then moving on to day two, right? You would also be learning things like strings and files. Moving on to day three, you'd have some understanding about lists, dictionaries, tuples, and some other data types. Now, moving on, you'd also be learning about regular expression called regex. You'd also be learning about conditionals, loops, and all of this. You'd be diving into object-oriented programming, where you will be talking about classes, instances, functions, and the likes. We then go, a step further to learning about databases, where you'll be setting up databases and storing information using MySQL, which enables you to write SQL statements, right? We'd also be learning about HTTP and web services, right? You also, be touching down some data science concepts such as NumPy, SciPy, and Pandas, right? You'd be doing some visualization using Matplotlib and SciPy. You'd also then be diving deep into Django, where you'd be able to create, a web app, a full web app that would connect to a database, that would have static files, that would have views, and in other words, a web application at the end of the day. So these are the things that we are going to be, working ourselves through while we are taking this beginners class, basically. So yeah, I know for some of you might be quite familiar with this, right? Yes, we'll be, you know, doing things a little bit different, right? And we'll be achieving, different milestones while we are taking this course. So for today, basically, right, we need to like have an overview of what Python is, right? We also need to have an overview of what Postgres is. We'll be setting up Python environments. Would also be setting up Postgres environment. We'll have some sort of introduction to Python syntax, statements, and conditions. And we'll be just having a brief introduction to Django. So yeah, for most of us, I know you're quite familiar with Python already, and you might as well know what Python is, right? So what is Python, right? To just refresh our minds, basically what Python is. So just like I said earlier, this is going to be an interactive class. I would like us to contribute to the topic being said. So yeah, what's Python basically? does anybody have an idea about Python is, can just kindly, you know, opt in to speak. And yeah, the floor is yours. What is Python?
Okay, I'd like to say something.
All right.
Okay, Python is a object-oriented higher programming language.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, Python is um, an high language that supports object-oriented programming. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Leonard. Who else has some definition as to what Python is, what they understand? It could just be anything that you understand about Python, not necessarily a formal definition. No, anyone? Okay, okay, okay. Well, that's by the way. So just like Leonard said, Python,
No, Michael.
Michael rather, sorry, Michael. Okay. So yeah, just like Michael said, you know, it's a higher level programming language and also supports object-oriented programming, right? So what that means basically by object-oriented is that it's actually a programming language that actually supports you orchestrating scenarios, right? So in a layman term, when you were to explain what OOP is, right, object-oriented programming, right, is, you'd have to put it in this way because it makes it a lot simpler to understand. So you have scenarios, you have situations, you also have problems. So sometimes you might want to solve a problem, right? And or sometimes you might want to orchestrate a scenario, for example. So, for example, you have some group of people, right? Probably a family, right? And this particular family that you have, they do have some, similar qualities to them, right? They have similar traits to them as a family. So, for example, in a family, you might have people that have, that look alike. You might have people that have, pointed nose. You have people that have, brown eyes. You might have people that are taller. You have people that are smaller, and all of those. So within that family, there will be some people that have similar traits, right? Or there will be this particular trait that is quite similar to everybody in the family. You might want to orchestrate that scenario using Python. You might want to say, oh, okay, I want to know which family or where this person belongs to, right? So you can create a family of this particular person and you can use the attributes of this particular person everywhere else in your programming language. So it's more like you saying, oh, okay, I have a dog, right? And there are similar traits that a dog has. A dog can bark, a dog has four legs, a dog, has tongues and all of those, right? So while you're writing your script, you might want a situation where you can always use the attribute of a dog. So you create a dog class and as well create an instance or an object of that dog and make use of it elsewhere. So that's what they mean by object-oriented programming. So you can create, you know, something and initiate instances of that particular thing, as you go on, you know. It's also a high-level programming language, which means that you can make use of Python to compute complex, and large systems. So systems that might require you to do a lot of high level computation, maybe scientific or mathematical, right? Python has those ability for you to be able to create those high level systems. right? Because it's a high level programming language, right? You can often use Python as well to build websites, just like I mentioned earlier, right? Using Django to make web applications. You can also use Python, to automate tasks, just like I also said earlier. Becoming an automation expert, you'd want to use Python to write programs that enables you to automate tasks, right? You can, you know, use Python for data science. So within the data science space, you can perform data analysis, right? You can perform natural language processing. You can build machine learning models. You can build deep learning models. You can train an AI agent and all of those using data science. And all of these processes are being done using Python, right? So Python is also a general purpose language, meaning that it can be used to create a variety of different programs, right? And it's actually beginner friendly, just like most of you has testified, right? Writing codes, it takes you to write, few lines of code using Python to achieve the same thing that you might want to achieve using another programming language. So, for example, in Java, if you'd want to print out a statement in Java, it typically going to take you like 4 lines of code or shorter sometimes if you refactor properly to print out a statement. But in Python, it take you just 1 line of code to initiate a print statement, right? So this is how flexible and how lightweight Python could be, and it still achieve the same purpose as those other programming language, right? So that's another big flex for using Python, right? It's versatile. It's very versatile, right? It supports a lot of packages, right? And all of those. So that's basically what Python is, right? And I've also walked you guys through what Python is used for, right? I've said automation or scripting, I've said data science, I've said web development, and some other things. So that's basically what Python is. So we now know what Python is basically. We know that Python is high level programming language. We know it supports object oriented. We know it's more beginner friendly when it comes to tasks. We know that it's versatile because we can, use it with a lot of packages and all of those good stuffs. So moving forward, we also want to talk about Postgres, right? What is Postgres? What is it used for? Right? So what Postgres means basically is a relational database management system, right? So what do we mean by a database management system? So I would like to orchestrate that for you guys, what that means basically. So just a moment. Some point. Let me share my screen. Okay. Mhm. I guess you guys can see my screen now, right? So yeah, I'd like to show you guys what, or explain to you guys what database management system is. So yeah, basically databases. right? So we have all right. So databases are actually used for writing, right? Reading, updating, and at some point while you are working with your Python code, you would be accumulating a lot of data, making use of a lot of data. So, and this data sometimes you might want to do a lot of things with this data for them. You might want to store this data sometimes to analyze this data. The data sometimes, right? So when you have data, for example, data and you want to store your data or you want to analyze your data, how you simply make use of what we call databases, right? So database just a container, right? It's just a container. This you have a container. So in this container, every data that you want to store them inside this container so that you can keep them safe for use. Some save your data into your container so that you can keep them. Database is right. So we now know what database is, right? They're just basically containers where you can save data, right? We also know save data sometimes, right? We might need to save data sometimes to analyze them. We might need to save, some other time, right? So these databases or this, how do we create a database? How do we create this container? How do we make sure, right? So that brings us to the topic of this, right? Systems, right? Then we also have what we have our database here, and have our script, for example, key things. We have a script, we have a database, right? So we know what a database is. We are trying to, right, basically. So how do we save this? Right? We make use of what we call database, right? These database management systems, what they do, enable us to be able to save data, right? They are just that enables us to save data. So things like, or we have things like user one, have in
Sorry, sir. It's like it's breaking. The network is breaking. We can't really hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Honestly, it's not the only one. Even I thought it's my network. Your words are breaking.
Oh, okay. For oh, yeah, sorry about that. Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Oh, okay. All right. So then we have the network. Most of the times when you want to make a call, the user you want to make a call, you'd have to have a network provider and Glue and the likes. MTN might have or something, right? You able to access network, right? So yeah, the user card, maybe network, maybe MTN, Glue or something, create network or make networks, right? But without a provider, without MTN, Glue, and whatnot, send text message and all of those. Same thing with databases, right? But you'll not be able to have access to this database without. So it's a database management system that enables you. It's a database management system that enables you to be able to delete a database management system. It's the one that enables you to be able to and all of those. So that's basically what a database. So we now know what a database is. So how do you talk to this database? Are you talking to it speaking in tongues, or how do you even talk to this particular database? Just like you know every programming language, right? They are used to of instruction for the computer to understand. So you have a computer and you have a programming language, Python, for example, Python, right? And you use Python to write some set of to understand, right? But in terms of particular language that we need to write so that the database will be able they are saying basically. And what is this particular language? We call this language SQL, SQL. And what does SQL means? It means query query language. That's what SQL. You will not be able to talk to your database with to talk to your data management systems, right? And your data management um your database. So with SQL, it will understand SQL and you're saying, oh, okay, database, please select for me. I know you might not example, select for me role number one, my table means basically is that you are writing an SQL code, the kind of language that databases understand. Writing SQL, you will not be able to create database, you will not be able to get something like this to the database. That's the only time a database is trying to say. So basically that we do when we are creating database. So we now understand, right? Sometimes you might want to store data, sometimes you might want to analyze, right? So before you create a database, what to enable you to create a database? Yeah, which is the database management system. not be able to create a database, right? Is how do we communicate with our database? Does your database understand Python, JavaScript? No. Does it understand Java, C++, those things? The only language a database understands is what? SQL. It means structural query language. So you need to write structural create a database. So now the major question here is all right. Apologies, guys. I had to get power. So, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, just like I was saying, I said before you'll be able to talk to a database, you need SQL, right, which is a structured query language. Without this structured query language, you wouldn't be able to communicate to a database, right? And even before you communicate to a database, you need a database management system, right? So the question is, what is this database management system, right? What kind of database management systems do we have, right? So that brings us to the topic of today. We have several database management systems. Most of you might have heard them before. Some of you might have used them before. But for those of you that have not used them before, I'll just be outlining some of the available database management systems that we have. We have MySQL, right, which is a kind of database management system. We have Postgres, right? We have Oracle, and we have the SQL Server, right? So these are the different kind of let's bring it here. Yeah, these are the different kind of database management systems that we have, right? But currently for this particular curriculum or this particular course, we'll be making use of what? Postgres, just like you have on your curriculum. It was said that we're going to make use of Postgres. So with
Not
Postgres,
you, not you. The man I'm talking to, the man I'm talking
okay,
to.
Israel, do you have a
I
question?
am. Don't spoil the chat. Sit down here. Let the leg of this year.
Mute. Oops, sorry. So yeah, we'll be making use of Postgres in this particular course. So I guess we all understand what databases are, right? We just to reiterate, we know what database is a container we need to store information in, right? Why do we need to store information? Because sometimes we might have data that we want to keep. We might also have data that we might want to analyze, right? So what's the best way of storing this data? We need to put them in a database. But before we create a database, we need to make use of a database management system. Just like I explained, you cannot make a call without having a SIM card in your phone, right? Your SIM card is your network provider, be it MTN, be it Glo, be it Airtel, right? It's your SIM card that connects you to the network that you are making use of. Same thing as database, right? Your database management systems are what will connect you to the database. So without your database management system, it's just like you don't have a SIM card in your phone. You will not be able to connect to a database. But when you have a database management system, which is a SIM card, you'll be able to connect to a database. So just like you have MTN, Glo, Airtel, and whatnot, same thing, you have different kind of database management systems. We have MySQL, we have Postgres, we have Oracle, we have SQL Server, right? So this is entirely optional, or is up to you to choose which of the database management system you want to use, right, in the future. But as far as this course is concerned, we are taking you guys through Postgres, basically, right? And just like you have MTN, Airtel, Etisalat, and whatnot, everybody has the right to choose which of the network providers they want to use. Same thing, you have the right to choose which of the database management system to use, right? So yeah, that's it basically. And before you are able to create a database, you need to write a language that the database understand. And what is the language that a database understand? The database understands what? It understands SQL, right? SQL is not Python. SQL is not JavaScript. SQL is not C++ or Java, right? It's another separate language on its own. But don't be scared. It's not something too complex. I know some of us might be thinking that, oh, not even finished learning Python, already learning SQL. Well, SQL is an interesting language to learn, and it's something you grab over time, right? And what is this SQL? Just like I said, is a structural query language, right? It's a structural query language. And this is an example of what SQL language looks like, right? So yeah, this is basically what database is. This is an overview of Postgres itself and all of this. You don't need to know too much aside from this basic. While you get your hands on working with databases and Postgres, you understand things better. So I'd like to know, does anybody have any question relating to this, basically? What don't you understand? Don't you understand database? Do you understand why we need to store data? You don't understand database management system? You don't understand SQL? Ask me. No, sir. Well, we fine with it. Should I ask questions? Josephine, do you have any question? Israel, Michael, Osinachi, Leonard, do you have any question relating to this?
No, no question.
Okay. Josephine, do you have any question?
No question.
Yeah. Um, Leonard.
No question.
Okay. Josephine, what about you? screen is not there. So all right. So
I'm
that's
clear. I don't have any questions.
oh,
I
okay,
understand
okay.
perfectly fine.
All right. So yeah, that's basically what databases are and why we are using Postgres. Basically, I think we're done with this. Can just take out of our screen. Oh. So yeah, moving forward, we understand what Python is now, right? We also understand what databases are. Right? We also understand to an extent what Postgres is already. So we'll be going forward to setting up a Python environment. I know that's quite easy to do, though, quite easy to set up a Python environment. And I know most of you already understand how setting up a Python environment can be. So we have different ways of setting up Python environment, right? So one of the first way that we make use of setting up a Python environment is installing Python first, right? And then moving forward to making use of the Python shell, right? So a Python package actually comes with an interpreter. So this is how it works, right? You write a set of code, for example. Let me share my screen. Uh, okay, let's go to another board. So, right, this is Python, for example. It's Python. And so you install this Python, you install it into your machine. So you might have different kind of machines, right? People can be on Windows, you can be on Mac OS, you can be on Linux, for example. So why the moment you install Python onto your computer, it comes with two things. It comes with a shell, I like to call it a shell, and it also comes with an interpreter. Interpreter. All right. So these two things, you can either use this to write your Python code. So you can use your shell to write your Python code. So if I go onto my laptop now and I search for Python, for example, right, you can see I have Python 3.10, right? I can open it basically, right? And tada, we have something like this, right? You can write your Python code there, right? You can do print. Uh, hello, Bincom Academy, Academy class, right? And we can print that out. So you can make use of this to write your Python code. You can make use of this to write your Python code. This is what we call the Python shell, right? So what do we call the interpreter basically? So the interpreter is just a background software that works this way. So while you are writing your code, just like I wrote print hello academy class, Bincom academy class, you know, there's actually a software behind the scenes that is actually interpreting what you are writing. So it's interpreting it, it's giving it to the computer. The computer is understanding it and it's giving you a result. So as you are running your program, it's interpreting it almost immediately, right? Or immediately, I would say. So that's what the Python package comes with, right? It comes with a shell, right? And it also comes with an interpreter. So with Python, you can either install it on Windows, you can install it on Mac, you can also install it on Linux, basically. So that's basically how to set up Python traditionally, right? So, but there are other ways for you to be able